here's my clean cut first section. So now I'm going to do section number 2. And I'm going to write on here what these are. I know that my gray will fit on there, and I lay out my pattern and I make sure that I'm going to cover all of my gray, and I do just a general cut. And this is my piece number 1. And again, piece number 1, the back of the fabric. I lay it out on that piece number 1 and make sure that it covers it all. And because it's a long piece, I'm going to stick a pin in there. Now, this is my piece number 2, and here's my line, but I don't have a straight line, it's kind of a diagonal. So I could take piece number 2 and just put it on there and sew it, but what I'm going to do to begin with is I'm going to fold it on line number 2, and I'm going to take my little add a quarter ruler and place it on there, and I'm going to trim this so that I have a straight line to put piece number 2 on. So now I'm going to take basically it works the easiest if I just use a square. So I take my piece number 2 and I'm going to lay this on here, and I know that it's wide enough to fit there. So I'm just going to trim this off, and I'm going to turn it over, and because we're doing fronts to fronts, I'm going to put my front right on there. Now I want to make sure, see my sew line ends right here, but if I look up here, my piece number 2 ends a little bit farther up than I started. So I want to make sure that when I flip this, it's going to flip open to cover that entire piece. So I have to make sure that when I flip it, it's going to cover, so I have to slide it down a little bit. And you'll get used to making these adjustments as you go. Sometimes they don't cover and you have to take them off and start again, and that happens. So now I'm pretty sure that my piece 2 is going to cover it all. So I'm going to put this on the machine, and I'm going to sew from clear out here all the way across into my selvages. Alright, now I've sewn it on there, and I've gone all the way out past the dotted line. Now I'm going to press that open. Now, as you can see, there's a little bit of white right there, but when I look on the back side of my pattern, that's going to be trimmed off. So we're okay there. So there's piece number 2. Now I'm going to do the same thing with piece number 3. And you want to trim your threads as you go. It's easier as you when you start putting things together. Well, that didn't work. My gray slid. So we're going to need to take that out. Now, the bad thing about paper piecing is the taking out. The taking out is a little bit harder because you have such a small stitch. And if the paper rips, that's okay. You just put a little piece of Scotch tape over it and just sew right over the Scotch tape. And you don't have to throw it out and start over again, because eventually that paper is going to come off anyways. There we go. Now I just pull my threads out of there, and I line this back up, and for some reason I'm not lined up very good. And I'm going to stick another pin in here. You will find as you learn to paper piece that it's easier to do little pieces than big pieces. Big pieces like to move around on you. So I'm going to flip that open. That's going to work. Let's try it again. Alright. That looks a little better. And my piece 2 is complete. So now I'm going to take my ruler again and put it on the solid line, and I'm going to trim it. And there is the bottom of my bird bath. There's the bottom in the middle. Now we have one more piece, and this piece has a lot more pieces to it than the first two. So I have some water here that happened to be pre-cut from the kit, which works great. So I know it's going to cover all of piece 1. So I'm going to take the back of my fabric and I'm going to put it on my pattern, and I'm going to pin it. Just because again it's a long piece and you want it to stay where it belongs. Now piece number 2 is a diagonal again. So I'm going to fold this on my line, and I'm going to trim it so I have something to line up on. Piece number 2 is gray, so I'm going to take my gray here. And now I'm going to line piece 2 up on the piece that I just cut. So I have this nice straight edge to line it up on, and I've got to cover piece 2. So I've got it, I extend way beyond it. So now when I sew in here, I no longer have a selvage. So I'm going to start my sewing just on this side of the line. I want to make sure that when I sew this line that it's going to lock in this seam. So I want one stitch over that seam to lock it in, and then I'm going to sew all the way out. So there's my one stitch beyond the line. So I crossed that line, but I didn't go way over. Now I sewed it. I'm gonna press it. And again, I'm gonna make sure that I have a nice clean press. Everything lays flat, no partial open seams. And I'm gonna go on to piece 3. Piece 3 is at the other end, and again it's a diagonal. I'm going to fold the paper between piece 1 and 3 because 2 is on the other end. So now this is piece 3, and we've already done piece 1, so we're locking in piece 1. I'm going to trim it with my 1/4 ruler, and then I'm going to do another general measurement, make sure that I have enough to cover, and I'm going to cut that. I'm going to put front pieces together on that nice straight line that I just cut, and I'm going to sew. And again, I'm going to go one stitch on this side of the line and all the way out on that side. We don't back stitch in paper piecing, we just go a stitch beyond the line. Now I've sewn that. Now I can unpin piece 1 because I've sewn both ends in, and now I'm going to press it. So I've done piece 3, now I'm going to do piece 4. The line for piece 4 is between 1 and 4, so I'm going to fold my paper on that line. Now, this goes a little bit over that line, my seam does, so if your seam is kind of holding that back, you can rip the paper, just flatten it out and kind of rip it a little bit. Now I'm going to trim everything along that paper, all the way down. So I'm trimming off the gray, I'm trimming off the blue, and I'm making a nice straight seam all the way down. And now number 4 is going to be the gray again. So I'm going to lay out my gray here. A little overkill, but that's okay. I'm going to trim it. I'd rather have too much than too little. Again, your paper piecing with small stitches is a pain in the butt to take it out. Now, I have this big long seam, and I'm going to line my piece up on there. I'm going to make sure that I stick out on both ends, and I know that I'm going to cover because I cut it, it's a big piece. So now I'm going to take it, and I'm going to start one stitch over into 5 and one stitch over into 6. Alright, now I've sewn. Now I'm going to press it open. and piece number 4 is done. Now piece number 5 is a piece of background, so I'm going to fold my paper on line 5, and I'm going to trim. And now I'm going to go back to my background, and if I cut this piece on here, I'm going to have enough to cover. So I'm going to do a little general cut here, and I'm going to lay it on, and when I flip it over, I got to make sure that I cover this corner, and it's going to be close, so I'm going to slide it down a little bit. I want to make sure that I catch that. So my piece sticks out down here past this corner. So technically, you know, we have a tendency just to line it up to here because this is where we start, but we need it out that far. So I line it up on the back, front pieces together, and I'm going to sew piece 5. Now I've sewn that on there, I'm going to press it open, and now I'm going to go on to piece 6. Piece 6 is on the other end. I'm going to fold it on line 6, and I'm going to trim everything that sticks out on that fold. Got my nice straight line, and again, this is a piece of the background, so I'm going to cut another piece, and I'm going to line it up on my line. And I got to make sure that I stick out far enough to catch that corner again. And I'm going to sew piece 6. Now I'm going to press it open, the general piece. And now I've done all of my pieces, and I'm going to put my 1/4 inch on my dark line and cut along my dotted line. Okay, there's piece 1, there's piece 2, and there's piece 3.